Ladies and gentlemen, Lou Seiler. Good morning, I'm Jerry Beal, your facilitator for today's service. Now would be a real good time to turn your cell phone off or turn it on stun. If you have any announcements, you're almost too late. So fill them or a joy and sorrow out in the back and somebody will run them up here. I want to welcome everyone here and those on Zoom. If you're willing and able, please rise or turn in your seat and wave to the people on Zoom.
How many people are on Zoom?
I don't know yet. I just walked up here. I'll let you know.
Better here.
If you're new here, please ask any one of us how to access the website or find out how to get involved in our activities. If you'd like to receive the newsletter, please ask Becky Tanner, not Debbie, Becky, to put the name on the list. I've had someone ask about a senior exercise class, which I assume would be sort of Tai Chi and, come on, Joe. Anyway, stretching and some movement. If there's interest, let me know. Tina's hours will be, as usual, Tuesday, June 11th from 12:30 to 3:30. You're free to drop in at any time during that period, but if you can, please make an appointment. Bisbee Pride is June 15th, and application or sign-ups are on the table in the community room. The ladies' church lunch is 11 o'clock on this Friday, June 14th.
So welcome to worship here today on this 9th day of June. You might wonder why I'm doing Juneteenth 10 days early and why I'm talking about Father's Day. If I ever plan to do a pulpit palooza swapping of the pulpit mid-June again, remind me, don't do it. Next week, you're going to have Inga Detweiler, Reverend Inga. She is serving at Borderlands, and I'm going there. She's coming here, and she's probably going to talk about staying calm when the bleep hits the fan. So I think that will be worth hearing. But I was going to miss Father's Day and Juneteenth, so I've brought them together. The theme for this month, for all the 4 churches in this area, is collective liberation. And if you have a good definition, please tell me. I've been hunting UU websites. I'm sure they know what they're thinking of, but I wasn't clear when I came to that. But I do think there's a really powerful lesson to unpack about collective liberation. It's a complicated, multifaceted thing. And I think it's really important to begin, most of all, with the most important liberation that I think has happened in our country's history, which is the freeing of the slaves. Now, I'm looking out and I'm assuming maybe some of you have some enslaved ancestors, but most of us probably don't. Some of you do, yeah. So as Kimberly says, you know, we know hard, scary restrictions and compromises to our rights, but we don't have in our living memory a deep soul-rooted knowledge of what it means to be in chains. But take a deep breath, take it in, and try to imagine, listen, try to feel, try to celebrate this holiday we are privileged to celebrate.
Our opening reading, Who Are We Called to Be, is by Pat Ruby Lichty, a member of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Berks County, Pennsylvania. This is really something here. At the national level, she is a member of the diverse and revolutionary Unitarian Universalist multicultural ministries, and thank goodness they call that DRUM. They seek to nourish and maintain people of color in our liberal religious tradition. She is also volunteers as a math tutor at the local community college GED program. She wrote, Our chalice is a reminder that in hard times, our ancestors in faith acted with courage to bring hope and safety, to bring life itself to threatened people. We light it today as a reminder of who we are called to be in a world still dangerous and despairing. With courage and faith, we bring ourselves to the work before us. We are a caring congregation, and we share what gives us joy and what weighs heavily on our hearts. I will read the joy and sorrow that I have here. I assume there are no more in the back. The late Roland didn't get here enough to make an announcement, so he made it into a joy. My joy, free thinkers, alive and well. I would assume it's supposed to be after all these years, and they meet today at 1 p.m., right here in this very building. Now I'll add some stones for all the joy and all the sorrow that fills our heart, but not have been spoken here today.
You may have heard or read this story. It's been going around on Facebook, and I find it really moving and appropriate to speak about on Father's Day. In a new documentary called Springsteen on Broadway, fairly new, someone is interviewing Bruce Springsteen, and he talks about the birth of his first child and how he was estranged from his own father, but his father traveled quite a distance to be with him. I mean, he's pretty quiet, but he's with him. And Springsteen says, as we were nursing our morning beers, I realized he had come to make an apology for how distant he had been and to kind of make a plea to restore the relationship. Of course, he couldn't say it out loud, but he could sit there and be in his son's presence. And this made Springsteen think about what it is to be a parent. We are ghosts or we are ancestors in our children's lives. We either lay our mistakes, our burdens upon them, and we haunt them, or we assist them in laying those old burdens down, and we free them from the chain of our own flawed behavior. And as ancestors, we walk alongside of them. We assist them in finding their own way and some transcendence. Now, I suspect most parents are both, right? Ghosts and ancestors. I just want to take a moment in honor of Father's Day coming up later in the month, and in honor of all of us who miss parental figures in our life, our own biological parents or others, or still have them alive in some way. I want to take a moment to take a deep breath and take another deep breath and feel your chair. Close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. Do you have any ghosts in your own life who dumped their wounds on you instead of helping you bear your own? Feel into your own pain about that. Imagine their pain. Do you have any ancestors who walked alongside you, who helped you carry burdens, and maybe even find some transcendence? course, we know sometimes the same person can be both ghost and ancestor. Have you found some healing? Feel the transformation. Feel the transcendence. What did you learn to carry with you? Slowly open your eyes if they were closed. Be here in this place. There are no failures here. Just sacred flexibility and our presence with each other. So I think it's a privilege we get to celebrate Juneteenth this month. But I know that most of us don't really fully know what that means, right? What it really means to be free. If you've ever watched the PBS story, Finding Our Roots, and you're traveling with African Americans as they go, and they see their family's name, not even names, the name of the owner and the ages and genders of people who might be their ancestors, seeing them listed as property, seeing them try not to cry, you get a tiny inkling of what it must be to have that in your ancestry and in your present. So I suggest maybe the important thing is we have to listen and try to understand and be present. Not be so scared we'll make a mistake that we don't show up. There's a Juneteenth parade here on the 19th. There are many events happening with Juneteenth. Look in our newsletter for more. We can just show up and listen and not talk, maybe. Maybe we can ask one question of someone who doesn't mind being a teacher, but we have to check that out. I'm saying this for myself, of course, not just at you guys, but it's hard. It's hard to understand. It's hard to live into. I know there are things maybe you didn't understand that you have lived into. I didn't understand Pearl Harbor and what effect it had for my parents until 9/11, right? They're just events and histories we have to try to understand, but may not get to. So Bruce Springsteen and Juneteenth pushed me to ask, where are we ghosts? Where do we just hand on our burdens without learning from someone else and just make their burdens heavier? Where has something been so painful we haven't looked at it, we've just run away, and therefore it explodes in weird ways all over our children or our friends or our coworkers? And do we ghost others? Like, that modern term, ending a relationship without a message, but maybe just not showing up as much as someone else would hope we could be there. Do we ghost others? As I look for some understanding about Juneteenth, about collective liberation, I found some lovely words from Adrienne Marie Brown, Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds. She talks about the importance of love at the center of everything we do, of any act of collective liberation, of any attempt to not ghost someone else. We have to dare to love, care, and show up. She says, when we're engaged in acts of love, we humans are at our best and most resilient. Look at romance, she says. We try to be our best. Look at how we try to treat our children. We try to give up everything for them. And what about the love of family that makes us drop everything to take care of them? The love of community that makes us work tirelessly with broken hearts. Perhaps humans' core function is love. Love leads us to observe in a much deeper way than any other emotion. If love were the central practice of a new generation of organizers and spiritual leaders, it would have a massive impact on what was considered organizing. If the goal was to increase the love, rather than winning or dominating a constant opponent, we could imagine liberation from constant oppression. We would suddenly be seeing everything we do, everyone we meet, not through the tactical eyes of war, but through eyes of love. We would see there's no such thing as a blank canvas. Everyone comes to us with ancient, complicated stories and fertile histories full of potential. We would organize with the perspective that there is wisdom and experience and amazing stories in the communities we love. Instead of starting up new ideas all the time, we'd want to listen, support, collaborate, merge, growth through fusion, not competition. And she says, we would understand that the strength of our movement is in the strength of our relationships, which could only be measured by their depth. Scaling up would mean going deeper, being more vulnerable, more empathetic. Last week, as we studied the changes in the bylaws of the denomination, we heard one reader, Ann Schneider, writing from her saying, "What is love? Why is that at the center of what we believe? What does that even mean?" And at the time, and she said, that's such a Christian understanding. And I sat there thinking, oh, I guess I'm still Christian, because that's at the center of who I am. But as I look at the work of Reverend Angel Kyodo Williams, she challenges me to look at love more deeply and to think about what it could mean in a more fiery, active way. She talks about how she sees white love as kind of being anemic. She says she has lots of relationships with white people, but they're still they care, they show up, but they care about the system they're part of and the privilege they still have. They find a never-ending litany of excuses to maintain power over rather than power with. They don't experience love as an earthy, grounding power to be wielded for justice, something with a tending fire that burns through whatever may obscure truth. And she finds that in her community, right? This kind of love fueled by anger that is fiery and seeks justice and names the truth. It's the fire that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. felt. It's the fire I find in the prophets that are one of our sources, the prophets who foretell the future only because they look so honestly at the present. And they say, well, if you keep on doing these things, you can see what's going to happen. If you keep on not feeding the hungry and turning away the homeless poor, you can see what's going to happen. It's pretty obvious, right? That's a kind of fiery, justice-seeking love that Kyodo Williams wants us to look at. But she says that her white friends have an airy kind of love, one they are certain of the need for, one that is sustained by and benefits from breathing in deeply, but it's ultimately a private affair expressed only on the interpersonal realm. And she says white people, as much as people of color, have been programmed and policed as to who and how they could love. And she thinks very often, she says, this is really, really powerful. She says, how else could the imaginably decent, moral, ordinary white people stand to live in proximity, much less partake in open market slavery? Generations of people allowed their children to witness the sale and degradation of other human bodies. And this has gone on in the Jim Crow South with lynchings, if you've ever seen the postcards of the festive events of watching a lynching, these decent white people stood next to it. Because for them, love has been made private. It is not a public action. And what I really love about Kyoto Williams is she says, we have to talk about transformation. She says, with all due respect to Gandhi, we can no longer afford to be just the change. We have to be the transformation. Audre Lorde once said, we cannot dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. And Williams goes on to say, when you pick up a hammer, you start thinking everything's a nail. And maybe you need other tools. And maybe it isn't just about, she's very active in Zen Buddhism, and she watches how it's been appropriated into this country and how it becomes a very important private thing for Americans. How it allows you to step back and realize you don't have to react. You can meditate. You can see your emotions, but not be your emotions. And that's really important. And then there's the next stage, which comes out of Mahayana Buddhism, with the bodhisattvas who realize they could be enlightened, but wait until every sentient being is enlightened. You can care about your community. You can have empathy. You can be present. But beyond that, in another form of Buddhism, there are indestructible values that Williams feels we have to live for. And for her, one of them is transforming anger through love into justice. We have to both work on ourselves as we start working for collective liberation, right? So that we don't become those who dump our burdens and our pain, but we understand where we need to grow. And then we can become ancestors who walk alongside. And then we can start caring about our communities, being empathetic and walking with them. But then beyond that, we have to see how the very air we breathe has been built up into the system we live in, a system where we could stand by and watch lynchings, right? I mean, most of us would find that abhorrent, right? Most of us know we are not intrinsically racist that way. But the structures we live under continue to blind us to that, I believe. We do have a prison system that needs to be addressed and changed. And this state, how many of you think we should have private prisons? Right? They're a great business. How dare I attack it? But we need to open our eyes to so many things that are happening, right? How many of you have ever realized, oh my goodness, I just woke up only to fall asleep again to everything that's happening? And so I believe that as we look towards collective transformation and collective liberation, yes, we have to start with ourselves. And it's all about being willing to feel pain at some level, right? Acknowledging where we have been hurt by our ghosts, where we have wanted to be ancestors and have failed, where we could not ghost members of our own community, right? But where we can also work to transform the world we live in other ways. So I ask us all to do that, to move through that pain into love, working with one another. And again, I ask you to close your eyes, maybe not fall asleep, but maybe fall asleep if you want to. And think about, who have you ghosted? Have you ever seen that you were ghosting and tried to be more of an ancestor, to walk alongside, to be present, even at the cost of feeling pain and possibly some guilt? How can we all go forth, fueled by our ancestors, becoming better ancestors for a future we may never see, but may be better because we have been here. Thank you.
Our closing words, inspired by our ancestors, come to us from Reverend Leah Derlin Jones, who is a lifelong UU and served as a minister of faith development for the UU congregation of Charlottesville, Virginia. Leah served as the congregation's professional religious educator for over 28 years. She shares her life with her wife Karen and their daughter Anna Lee. For those who came before us, we offer gratitude and thanks. May their memories be a blessing. May we feel surrounded by their love. May we go forth from this time and place. Let us be inspired by their courage, their wisdom, and their dreams. Let us honor them by doing the work of living boldly, living mightily, in creating heaven on earth. Amen, and blessed be. After you hear sketch 2, you can split. This was written by Lou.